So welcome to probably the last episode of 2024. If I don't decide to interview another guest after Michelle J. Raymond, who is joining me today. Michelle is the founder of B2B Growth Co. and the leading LinkedIn growth strategist. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to say you saved the best till last. Can I say that just in case you don't add anyone else?
Well, I don't want to add anyone else, but at the last minute, sometimes some people come and say, okay, can we add some predictions and so on? But this is probably be the last episode of the year. And I'm really looking forward to discussing some LinkedIn insights. And maybe just we can start a little bit of looking to 2024, which is like what went wrong and what went right. And then look to the next year, because what went wrong and right this year will set the trend and the tone for the next year. That's what I feel.
I think you're right about that. And, my right and wrong might be different to other people out there, right and wrong. But I think what we have seen, no matter which way you look at it, that there's been a significant shift on LinkedIn in this last, 12 months that we've been through. So, I'm sure many people have mentioned AI, but I think the actual thing that's changed on LinkedIn side, which I don't particularly like, is it's more a pay to play scenario now. So with the introduction of premium and premium company pages, and premium's always been there, but there was never really a lot of difference between the free account and the premium. So for a free, you could do quite a lot on LinkedIn, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, we're going to cut back what you can do on the free account, which I totally understand from their perspective. They have shareholders, they have to make money. That's why we're here. But ultimately, I think with lots of the restrictions and the new things that are included in premium, like, hey, we've got all these AI tools. Did we ever ask for those, Ita? Did we? I don't think we ever wanted them as much as it feels to me like they're being shoved down our throats. So I think the pay to play vibe on LinkedIn this year, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. And then also, what's the use of having I don't want AI to write my comments or to help me write a post, to be honest. I mean, if you think about you and I, which we are posting quite frequently, we don't need those AI tools. I mean, I would need maybe some other sophisticated tools for analytics or to reach to some people, or I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'm premium, by the way, but I don't know how much I will be able to use that going forward.
Yeah, for me, I like the ideas of tools being there for people who may not be creating content as frequently as what we do, that are just getting started. One of the use cases I love it for, if English is your second language and these AI tools could help check, maybe you're not so confident writing in, English, and this could help you check and just make sure that it sounds okay. I'm all for things like that. But when it says, hey, can I just write it for you because you're going to outsource your thoughts and you're not capable of putting your own thoughts together, that I almost find offensive. I'm like, just back off. Everyone has their own voice. Everyone has their own skills and opinions, and they're entitled to put them across in their own way. And so I know that LinkedIn is so heavily invested in this area, and we're only going to see more and more of it. And the downside to this with AI, yes, it can be helpful. Yes, it helps you save a bunch of time. But when we're outsourcing our thinking to AI tools and just trying to put everything on autopilot, that to me is the complete and utter opposite to what we should be doing on LinkedIn. So this is why, for me, I'm not anti-AI, but I am anti trying to use AI to build relationships and build your thought leadership. That's a big no from me. And so where we went wrong this year, I think, is we got so focused on AI and the tools, and there was so much hype and it was coming at us every which way, that we forgot to focus on who we're in service of on the platform. And so for me, I really hope that we can get back to the fundamentals of marketing and the fundamentals of building relationships and just get focused on what really matters. And that is who you're trying to connect with.
Perfect. So in the new year, how do you see things evolving on LinkedIn? Because after that, I would like to touch base on what we should be doing, especially for businesses, not personally only.
I think when we go into the new year, there's one thing that we need to be really conscious of on the platform, and that is the changing demographics. So LinkedIn is roughly 65% Gen Z. So when you think about that on the platform, it's almost 2/3 of the 1 billion members are Gen Z. So the changes that we'll see on LinkedIn, the types of content that will resonate and go further, are really going to be driven by that age group. And when you look at that, that's why LinkedIn has introduced the video feed. So we've got the designated short form vertical video format feed that's come through on LinkedIn. And a lot of people, especially those Gen Xers like myself or older, are going, we don't need this. That's not what LinkedIn is. LinkedIn's all about writing. You know, go back to TikTok, go back to Reels, go back to Shorts. And I understand where people are coming from. You know, if you've been around on LinkedIn for a long time, like I have, but ultimately you have to be mindful of who is it that's out there using the platform. Those people make up, from what I understand, around 35% of the workforce in total, right? So they are the decision makers that are coming through. So we really have to shift the kinds of content that we create that resonates with that audience. And it doesn't mean you need to make short form videos, but it does need to make sure that you're aware that these people value trust, authenticity in the real way, like not the polished version of authenticity, the real warts and all, here's who I am. And also they're very purpose driven. They expect you to have opinions and support them on, you know, things that are, you know, they want you to make a stand almost as a brand or as individuals. That will resonate with them more. And so from that perspective, I think it's important to realize who's going to be on the platform. And when they're the majority, like you're going to see LinkedIn and everything that they put out really cater to that, because they got to keep them on LinkedIn, you know. So for those of you who might think LinkedIn's an old person's platform or not cool, no, it's really growing, continues to grow. And it's that younger generation that's really influencing, you know, what we'll see come through as features, what we'll see through, you know, come through as trends for content. And so from that perspective, yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting to watch. I don't know how I personally feel about it. I'm a little like, yeah, I don't know if that's for me, but I'm trying not to be a dinosaur and being open and going, okay, this is really resonating with people. And if I want my content to resonate with more people, then I need to be open to learning new things. And so I hope going into the new year that lots of people, especially creating business content, will look to this and think, what can we do different?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because the knee-jerk reaction is like, okay, if it's Gen Z, then it should be short form, vertical, like snappy content. That's it. But and then the idea is to replicate what it has been produced on TikTok or Instagram as Reels on the platform also. But we know that in YouTube, it's not vertical, it's long form, and also Gen Z watch those videos. So do you think that short form is the place to be on LinkedIn in the new year, or LinkedIn would find its own voice?
LinkedIn's a bit of a contradiction when it comes to this, because on one hand, they've gone hard on video and mostly that short form, although it's not entirely just for short form. But if you go to the other side of what LinkedIn's prioritizing, it's actually long form in the format of newsletters and articles. So I'm going to talk about newsletters because I love them. I'm a huge fan, especially the fact that you can build up subscribers, which is great when you have a really crowded home feed and it's harder and harder to stand out. So building subscribers is great. Why have they gone hard on newsletters? Well, there's no other social platform that has a newsletter feature. So going long is really important to them. And they did a whole bunch of research with the Edelman Institute, which looked into this specifically. So B2B and thought leadership, we know that the thought leadership will influence those buying decisions. And so you're not spending $1 million plus on a short form TikTok video. That is not going to convince you to hand over $1 million. So this is where the balance between short form for attention, long form to really help buyers make decisions, it's ultimately, for me, going into the new year, finding a way, how do you mix two? How do you get the right balance of a little bit of everything? Because our buyers are at different stages in the journey. And this is going to be important. So it's no point going really long with a great newsletter or article and having no one see it because you haven't built a community and no one knows that you exist. And the other way, there's no point being all style and no substance if you're just going short form trying to get attention all the time, because you'll get the attention, but it won't help you grow business. And so I'm all about growing business on LinkedIn. That's why I love it. So for me, going into 2025, it's definitely about finding the right mix of attention grabbing and also thought leadership, which, they might seem like they're on opposite sides, but I think ultimately they help you build your brand.
In terms of long form, which is for example, the newsletters, and the short form being the TikTok style short videos, how do you see the impressions right now going? Because like for a post that has static image and that has like only a copy, I see that it's declining tremendously over the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's been really interesting for me. So I've been creating content on LinkedIn for 10 years. I'm not a huge analytics person. I'm not someone that's glued to my numbers, purely and simply because I look at it like when we judge the quality of a book, we don't look at each word. And so it's about zooming out over the year and seeing where things are trending up. Now, for the last couple of months, I would say my numbers have halved to what I would traditionally expect. So my numbers are typically 2.5 to 3,000 impressions on posts, like stock standard, sometimes up, sometimes down, but on average, they kind of fit around there. And over the last kind of couple of months, it dropped down to probably around 1,000 to 1,200, give or take, sometimes less, sometimes more, but realistically almost halved what I would traditionally expect. From that perspective, I was starting to think, okay, I've got to rethink this and figure out what can I do differently. Now, going into the last week or so, as we record this, my numbers have now gone up beyond what they were previously. So I don't know if LinkedIn's, twisted the little dial up a little bit. Maybe they turned it down a little bit too much and now they're bringing it back up. I don't know whether it's less busy on the platform right now, or maybe the tweaks that I made to my content are improving things, but it's now up to 3 to 3,500, which was kind of weird to go from, almost a third of that. So the lesson that I want to share with people is there is so much more beyond post impressions. That is the one thing that no one can control. We just need to keep showing up and putting out great content in service of others, to use the cliche that solves the problems that other people on the other side have, and keep nurturing relationships. And what I mean by that is you can go out and support other people's content. You can send them a direct message. You can find a piece of content and tag them in it and say, I thought of you, I thought this would be interesting, or you could add your voice. And so those nurturing types of things are going to be super important going into the new year, because if you think you can just fight your way out and claw your way for attention in that home feed, which is just going to get more and more busy, more and more crowded, and harder to stand out, I don't think that's going to serve you well in the new year. So yeah, there's lots of things, the platform will always keep changing, but it's interesting to see. The only real answer that we can do is make sure that we change with it.
Yeah. And the other day I was reading not an article, but a newsletter, not from LinkedIn, but from someone on LinkedIn, which is Luke Matthews. So he was like on his newsletter, he was writing that it's hard anymore. You cannot play the growth game. Meaning that you cannot grow your followers like tremendously like we did in the past. But it's now the time for businesses to grow more, and also ads to grow more and to get more impressions on the platform. Do you think that is the case?
Yeah, he's an interesting person to kind of follow, because, ultimately, his way of doing things is completely and utterly the opposite to the way that I do things. What I think is important, which I talk about, is the power of two. How can you use a company brand to help build your employees' personal brands? And how do you get them to use their personal brands to help build the company brand? So getting things to work together. So what you hear quite often on LinkedIn is company pages are dead. Company pages are a waste of time. Who cares about company pages? Because if you do a post, the reality is the same post posted on a small personal account versus a big company page account, the post impressions will be much higher on the smaller personal account. Why? Because people are looking out for the people they know. And LinkedIn wants you to stay on the platform as an individual. Why? Because we're the product. The longer you spend time on the platform, the more ads you see, the more money that they make. So from that perspective, I think it's really important that instead of just going it's one or the other, that you find a way to build a great, strong company brand and also build up your employees' personal brand and work together. I think no longer can we just say, okay, the marketing team's got the, company page, that's their job. And then all of a sudden you've got an employee advocacy team over here going in a completely different direction. And the two don't talk. And I've actually had some really interesting conversations with marketing managers responsible for their company pages that are going, our employee advocacy team, they won't even talk to us. They think we're in competition with them, which is, the complete and utter opposite of anything that's going to drive success for either side. And so having those conversations internally about working together is really important. As far as ads go, I don't play anywhere near LinkedIn ads. It's not my area of expertise. Everything I do is organic. I still think that there is an opportunity for people to grow organically on the platform without the need for ads. Now, what I would say to that is it will only work if you have a really strong thing that differentiates you from everybody else. So differentiation is going to be my word for 2025 because I've been working with so many clients, and when I look at their main competitors, it scares me how much they look alike. So what seems to happen is new social media manager comes in, responsible for the company page, has a look on LinkedIn at their main competitors. Whoever's got the most, they end up copying their style of content and what they do. Maybe not necessarily intentionally, but it's crazy how much, if you took the logos and colors off, it's almost identical. And so finding something that makes you or your business unique and having strong points of view or, some really, well backed up researched opinions and something that makes you stand out is going to be important. And I think that's the thing that people struggle with. That's the thing that I think people overthink. And so it's something that I do little. Every Friday, I do a post called the Tim Tam Tips, which, for those around the world that don't know what a Tim Tam is, it is the most delicious Australian, I'm going to say we call it a biscuit, you call it a cookie. It's called different things around the world. But ultimately, it's just something that people know every Friday. That's what I talk about. And they come to see what flavor is Michelle trying or what's the marketing lesson she's somehow tied back to her excuse for eating these chocolate biscuits. And so, it's my point that people will start looking back. And I've got, people around the world that are now saying, I saw them in the shops and I bought them, so I could test and they report back. And so I'm sorry to anyone else who's now got a Tim Tam cookie addiction because of me. But it's just my way of doing something that's different. I could talk about the marketing lesson without it, but then so could 200,000 other marketing people on LinkedIn. So find something that is unique. So one of the things I'd like to see more of in 2025 from marketers, especially with brands, is inventing a character. So think about the Duolingo owl, Hootsuite owl. I don't know what it is with owls, we're all learning from them, but Salesforce with their Einstein or the Explorer, like think about what's a character that you could create for your business that can almost be the mascot that people can be drawn to so that it's unique and it's distinct from your competitors, i.e. it can't be copied. So the words we use can be, maybe the examples, what's going on in the industry can, but your character can't be. So that's what I'd like to see more of next year.
I think it applies both to personal and business brands. It doesn't matter, like you have to stand out really to cut the clutter. So for 2025, especially for businesses to stand out, I know that you recently sent a newsletter about how to stand out with your business in 2025. Would you want to add anything other than the different types of contents and character?
Yeah, the other thing I'd love to see more of when it comes to businesses and content on LinkedIn. Now, if you haven't read my newsletter, then the one thing you need to know about me is I am so anti-stock images being used in company page posts. Like, can we just say for next year, 2025, no more stock images? Like, no one wants to see them. They are actually hurting your brand more than helping it. So we need to find better ways to communicate than just pull out a stock image from somewhere and type, a title on the slide and away we go. So from that perspective, I really hope that's number one thing. The other thing I'd like to see more of, so if I want to see less of that, I'd like to see more emotions in company and branded posts. And this would go on the other side to personal as well. And what I mean by it is not sharing your deepest, darkest secrets. It's about how do you get the audience to laugh on the other side? How do you get them to stop and think? How do you make them get angry about something? Because there are things going on around the world in different industries that you should be making a stand for. For instance, when I worked in the beauty industry, that's where I got started on LinkedIn, there were things that were happening back then where people were making false claims on the labels, like where they were saying that the product was great for the environment when really it wasn't, and that's where greenwashing came in. It's important for businesses to make a stand about things like that. And going back, what we were talking about earlier about Gen Z, but making people laugh, the use of memes or GIFs or things like that can really help people remember your brand and be able to recall it. And so that's what we're trying to do here. Find a way to make sure that your content lands on the other side, make somebody feel something so they can remember and recall you when they want to buy stuff. And that's why we're doing it, not for tricks on LinkedIn, not to try and get more likes and impressions, but to make sure that people can remember you when they want to buy. And that, I think, bringing those emotions into the content so that it doesn't just feel like, again, the words can be the equivalent of a stock image where if I didn't know better, it could be from any of your competitors. So just going back and going, when was the last time your content actually wasn't maybe quite so serious and sounded like the help desk? How can you inject some personality in there?
Yeah, and I think that's also the same case for overall marketing. And when you say stock images, my mind also goes to AI generated images, which is, we know, like in a second, if something is AI generated, even if it's very beautifully created. And it's the same for the copy. We can sense, and the more we see AI generated content, we're going to start, if all those AI will get better, we're going to start noticing that this is AI and this is not. We already know what is stock, what is not, right? So that's the same for marketing. I always tell to people, yes, you can use AI generated images because they serve a purpose, because you will need them in your, e-commerce sites and so on. But you have to make sure that you put some creativity and thinking behind the assets that you create. Because if you don't, then it's going to be like you're just one out of million other same AI generated, beautifully generated AI content. That's the thing. Also, I also suggest to people for overall marketing, actually. And it's good to hear that you think the same for LinkedIn as well.
Oh, absolutely. You have nailed it there. I'm so glad that you mentioned that one because it is almost the same, and the thing that I found about using AI tools myself, and I do like using them, is that they're really great for helping me refine my thoughts. But when I ask it to come up with something as an original thought, then it's just pulling from stuff that's already been created. I mean, that's how the generative AI works. It searches for everything else that's been created, pulls from that, learns from that, and then says, okay, is this what you want? That's why we saw so many rocket emojis everywhere. Like, have you ever seen so many rocket emojis as what we did in 2024? Like, it's just been crazy. And now there's a new one that I've noticed. It uses these really weird, I don't know if it's like a hyphen or a dash throughout the post, and you can see it. It's like in every second sentence, there's these random hyphens or dashes, which we don't use when we write our normal sentences. Like we just use commas or, like different things like that. So we can tell, and it's, not a bad thing if you need some help. Like, I'm all for getting help, but ultimately don't outsource your thoughts. Don't think that what you have to say isn't valuable. And you'll find the more that you just say it in the way that if we were sitting in a coffee shop and having a coffee, the way that we would talk together, if you post like that, that's what resonates with audience the most, not the polished professional versions. And that works on company pages and personal profiles. So think, how would I put this message across if I was sitting in a coffee shop with Ita and just wanted to tell her about, something that was important that would help her? That will make a huge difference.
I will ask one final question about how brands can organize their teams who manage LinkedIn. Because we know that, as a marketing person, I know that many of the brands, either for Instagram or for LinkedIn, they have a social media moderator, either internal or external. And that person is usually a little bit less senior, which is like more junior people taking care of it, or Gen Z people. And they are just getting like content from all over the place. Someone saying that, okay, we need to have a post with this and that. And how do you see like a brand should organize their social teams? Thinking about like, I know that it varies from a small brand to a large brand, but for a medium-sized brand that is like not too big, but that's posting like regularly on social channels, how do you see the best practice in terms of teams?
It's quite interesting. I'm working with a client right now who's a global brand who they have regional marketing teams set in a number of different places around the world. And then their local head office has a team. And, I'm helping them out with some content while they're having some staffing issues. And so it's been quite interesting to get really into this and see how this plays out within a business. And what I realized, and it doesn't matter the size of business, and this can apply to consultants or solopreneurs as well, is that things come unstuck and become really hard and ineffective when we don't actually take the time to stop and go, who are we creating this content for? What is the message that we want them to give? And here's our content strategy, which is going to guide us, and plan it out. Now, I'm horrific as a planner. I'm just putting it out there. I'm the world's worst planner. But what happens is it's fine while it's just me and my personal content. But when I want my company page to perform, or I've got multiple company pages, I need to stop and think, like, what is it that I can do better going into the new year? So I'm doing this process myself, and I'm looking, going, okay, what we haven't been doing is stopping and going, where are we driving the content to? So right now we did a process this year in my business where it was just putting content there and repurposing and getting in practice, which is great. The pages are now full of content where they were kind of ignored before. But the next level is, okay, what can we do to improve that content? And again, it's got to come back to, who are you creating it for? And if the answer is just for the business, then just stop, right? Just stop, because that is not why you're creating content. And for many businesses, sometimes it's you're creating content because you've got a talent crisis and want to attract better talent to the business. Sometimes it's because you want more leads for the business. Sometimes it's brand new and you want to build brand awareness. There can be all types of different reasons. And posting 5 times a week is not the solution that will get you closer to those goals. And so going back to the marketing fundamentals and the basics. And, I recently went to a talk that was done by the head of marketing for IKEA here in Australia and New Zealand. And it was really quite interesting because you think, oh, wow, I'm going to learn from the head of like a global company that everybody knows. And she just went, you know what? Yes, we might have some more fancy tools and resources, but we're going back to the basics and understanding the answers to those questions just as much as what everybody else is. And the difference between them and probably a medium-sized business is that they've just got teams that are so structured and strategic around who's our customer, what are the problems they have, how do we solve it, and how can we be different? And so you can really learn from those big brands because they're just doing the basics really well.
And then do you think that having like ghostwriters externally outsourced would work for some brands?
Yes. So, ultimately, I do that for some of my clients. Like, I write company page content for a limited number of clients. And once upon a time, I used to think, you know what? I'm not sure about this. Maybe training is a better option. Maybe we should be upskilling stuff. And that is my go-to. My go-to is always train the people internally to share the messages, because no one will ever do it in the same way that someone working there 24/7 will do, no matter how good the ghostwriter or copywriter is. The flip side to that is I'm actually finding that so many businesses have their resources stretched, that they have small marketing teams, maybe one person trying to do website blogs, internal comms, every social media channel across the board. They're doing everything. I can't even keep up with just the changes on LinkedIn myself, and I live and
Yeah.
breathe it. And so I have a lot of empathy for people out there that are small marketing teams trying to be everywhere, trying to do it to the best that they can. So I don't think anyone ever sets out to, create boring content or average content, or, they're just trying to get it done. And so answer to that question for me now is, I think it's important that if you can't get it done, that you do outsource, that you do ask for help, because it is important to have a presence on LinkedIn for your business, whether that's individuals or brands. Either way, being invisible is not an option. So, everything's on a sliding scale. So when I work with people, essentially, like when I come into the business, I would look and go, ideally, I would love to train your staff how to do social selling and build their presence on LinkedIn. We know that that will work more effectively than, say, creating content on a company page, in the beginning.
Yeah.
But if they don't want to, there's no amount of how much I sell the dream on LinkedIn is going to change it. So it's all about start where you're at and figure out, what can I do better in 2025? What can I build on? What gaps have I spotted that I could start processes and start small? And that's why you might have people in the business that don't want to be on LinkedIn or don't want to post content. Just ask them, could they like the company page post? That small action starts to build habits that you can then build on over
Yeah.
time. But if you just try and force people, I'll give you the handy tip, it never works. It doesn't happen in LinkedIn, doesn't happen in life. So, find little ways that will compound over time and they make a difference.
Mhm. I asked this question as a last question because we all know that tactics and strategic tips like predictions don't last too much. It's only about like finding the right organization style that matches to the brand. That will bring also the success. So that's why I wanted to ask, how should a company structure their teams? So to wrap up with, is there a business book that you would recommend to the readers on this final days of the year?
Yes, the LinkedIn branding book. Yes, it's mine. Yes, I co-wrote it. But why do I recommend it? And the LinkedIn branding book was written to give people a blueprint about how do you build a personal brand and business brand on LinkedIn and bring them together. And going back to my earlier point about what I think will make people successful going into the new year is really backing your employees and helping, kind of investing in them so that they can build their personal brands, and being okay with the fact that they might change jobs or they might leave or get headhunted, which is a big fear for a lot of businesses. And then also it gives insight to employees about why it's important for them and how, working for the best brand, the most well-known brand, the one that opens up doors for you, those blue chip brands that everybody knows around the world that, you see it in people's headlines, formerly Google or formerly LinkedIn, like where that means something in the industry. And every industry kind of has their way and their, the business that stands out. So from my perspective, I think it's about going back to the fundamentals of what your brand is and what it stands for. And within the LinkedIn branding book, there is a workbook that you can go back and answer some of these really important questions. And I think they're questions that people jumped over back in the beginning, or now the social media page has been handed over to, the third down the line social media manager that's just come in with no, experience on LinkedIn. As someone said to me yesterday, oh yeah, my boss said just go and get a 25-year-old from LA. They seem to know what they're doing on social media. Like that was their answer for who they should get for LinkedIn. I'm not even making that one up. And I was like, okay, but how do you support that 25-year-old social media manager who's only just started on LinkedIn and trying to understand it all? So, there's lots of funny things, but going back to your branding and setting up that strong foundation. So when you're on the platform, you show up as intended, and really that content strategy keeps you in a line. And that's how people get results on LinkedIn, as opposed to coming to this time of the year. And we've got a lot of people that are saying, I've been posting every day or 3 times a week or 5 times a week. I've got no leads for my business. and I don't feel like I've gotten anywhere. And so if that breaks my heart, and that's the one thing that I want to change, which is why we wrote that book, to really help people get towards their goals.
Mhm. And while we are reading that book, where should we have the coffee in Australia?
Well, the truth is, I don't drink coffee. There's the
Oh,
news flash. I go through stages where I love it. Well, I never love the smell or the taste, but I love caffeine. So I don't. But I happen to live in an area where I am surrounded by coffee roasting houses, of all little small branded boutique ones. And so the one that we love is called Coffee Alchemy, and it runs our coffee machine at home. It is the smartest investment I ever made, was to have good coffee for Lil, my partner who works in the business with me. She runs on coffee, so we've got to make sure we have good stuff. So if you're ever here in Australia, I promise I'll take people out so you can enjoy it. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, coffee is something that I wish I loved as much as everybody else, and I try to, and then I'm like, nah, it's just not for me. So yeah, so sorry to
you are
disappoint the
unique
listeners.
in that sense. I mean, like, this is the first time I'm hearing an Australian
I
not
know.
liking too much coffee, but
I
yeah, that's okay.
Look, I have to confess, it doesn't mean I don't love caffeine. I am one of those, silly people that drinks energy drinks and, loves an energy drink along the way. So I'm not caffeine free. I'm not someone that likes that. But for me, it's all about, I love the rush. I love the high. I love the caffeine side of it. But I get jealous, and I'm also someone that doesn't drink beers, and I watch people drink those on a hot summer's day here in Australia, and again surrounded by lots of little microbreweries where I live. And I go, I
Yeah.
wish I could drink that, because you look like you're really enjoying it. So yeah, if anyone's ever here in Sydney, reach out and connect with me, because I will genuinely take you to come and enjoy some of the cool places that we're surrounded by where I live.
Thanks so much, Michelle. And for those of you who is not following any expert about LinkedIn on LinkedIn, I would really highly suggest following Michelle J. Raymond, because she's one of the person that I really look up to learn what's going on. Thanks so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm so glad that we finally got to actually speak.
Yeah, and I think we should, like, at the end, I should add some kind of jingle bells. I should ask to my producer to add that.
I love Christmas. It's my favorite time of year, so I'm all for that.
Okay, I will make sure we edit that. Thanks so much.
No problems. Cheers.